stop scrolling for money advice from people who don't have a license to lose. Hi, I'm 𝗵𝗽𝗶𝗽, CPA. I specialize in travel creators just like you and help them build clean books, amazing smart tax strategy, and financial systems that actually support your growth and how you're wanting to scale. You handle the content, I handle the numbers, the structure, and the compliance. Let's get into it. Okay, I want to talk to us travel content creators, and I say us because I have a family of 8 and I love traveling and I always record too. Just because you filmed a reel or took some photos for your brand while you're on vacation, that doesn't mean the whole trip is a business deduction. The IRS cares about why you left your house in the first place, not what you did once you got there. That can't be all that this is about. If you're on a family trip and you decide to film a quick day in the life video, that's still a vacation, unfortunately. A real work trip is one that's planned specifically to make you money or grow your business. The intent matters. The IRS office doesn't look for content only, but the intent behind the content. So they ask, did you go on this trip to earn income, or did you just happen to work while you were away from home? You don't need to be an accountant to understand this. It's all about the bucket the trip falls into. They really want to and look for the primary purpose rule. That's the 51% rule. For a trip to be deductible, more than half of your days must be business days. And you can break that into hours. A normal business day is 8 hours. If you have 5 or 6 hours of content creation, photo shoots, planning and vision casting and retreats scheduled within those days, then those can count. But you have to have at least 51%. So if you spend 4 days lounging and 3 days working, guess what? It's a personal trip. Another caveat is something like saying, I checked my email every day I was gone. That does not count. That does not mean you didn't go on that trip to check your email in a foreign country, right? To the IRS, a work trip is something that has specific tasks that is planned ahead of time with pre-booked photo shoots, documents, travel plans, that kind of stuff. Say you're meeting with brands or scouting locations for a paid project. If you didn't have those things on the calendar before you left, it's hard to call it a business trip. Another thing that's really interesting for content creators, specifically for travel content creators, is getting hosted or winning a trip. It sounds like a dream, right? You're like, they're paying for me to stay in this luxurious hotel. They're paying for business class flights. It can actually cost you money come tax season. There's 3 different things about this. Number 1 is the income is what counts first. So if a tourism board or brand pays for your flights and hotel, the value of the trip needs to be considered taxable income. It's like they handed you a check for the amount of that cost you. Then if you have that income, the deduction counts second. But remember, you can only write off the cost of the trip that you can prove was strictly for business. Many creators think free equals no taxes. In reality, hosted usually means this is income I need to report. You might end up owing taxes on the value of that trip. If you want to stay on the right side of IRS Code 162, you need more than just a folder of receipts. This code is the golden rule of travel for business owners. It says an expense must be ordinary and necessary to be deductible. The receipt only proves that you spent money. It doesn't prove you were actually working. So a receipt for $200 for dinner in Bali doesn't tell the IRS anything. The things and the way to win an audit in case of IRS digging into your expenses is itineraries, content calendars, and proof of scheduled meetings. This shows them that the trip had a structure and a goal beyond looking cool on the feed. For a content creator specifically like yourself, there is a fine line between hobby and a business. You could be looking at sightseeing versus scouting. If you go to the Eiffel Tower just to see it, that's personal. If you go because you have a contract to review a specific tour on the Eiffel Tower for an affiliate partner, that is ordinary income in your industry and necessary, which means it's required to do the job. Another thing is the deliverables. Did you have a contract to deliver a certain amount? Did you have a production schedule? If the trip was built around a specific deliverable, like a YouTube video or a brand guide or a campaign for social media, it fits the test as being ordinary and necessary. One last thing, documenting the why before you fly. A big mistake creators make is they try to justify a trip 6 months after it happened, right? So number one is timestamp your intent. Write down your business goal for that trip before your airplane leaves the tarmac. Send yourself an email with the trip's purpose and has a date and time on it, right? The next thing is to connect the dots for an auditor. Explicitly tie your trip to specific revenue, such as I'm going to Tokyo to film 3 videos for X sponsorship. It's much harder for an auditor to prove holes in that than I'm going to Tokyo to find inspiration. If that was the case, there would be way too many of us trying to deduct personal travel. So number 1 is we want to navigate the gray areas with the IRS with confidence. Gray does not mean illegal, okay? It just means the burden of proof is on you as the taxpayer and not the IRS. The creators who get burned are not trying to be dishonest or illegal. They are just literally undocumented. They don't have the documentation they need to make their stance with the IRS. So now we're going to talk about the personal add-on strategy. You can absolutely enjoy your trip, but you have to be honest about the math. Prorating is your friend. Let's say you had 4 days of filming and production, documented itineraries, meetings, even tours that you were taking, and then you had 2 days at the beach. You can deduct the entire airfare because you had to get there and you have to get home. What you might not be able to deduct is those last 2 days of hotel expenses, okay? Simple math, if you spent $1,000 for 6 nights and it was, I don't know, $180 per night, you would deduct 4 times 180 and 2 times 180 would be its undeductible expense. It's a simple fix, and if you have a great bookkeeper, it just makes it easy. Don't recharacterize every trip. If a trip is 80% personal, don't try to make it 100% business. Keep the 2 parts separate and clear. Do the math. It's not that hard, and if you need help, you know where to come. Now I want to talk about red flags that could trigger audits, specifically in the travel content creator space. So the first one is the +1 problem. You cannot deduct your partner or friend's plane ticket just because they helped film on this trip. Unless they are a documented employee or contractor or a necessary business partner, their seat is a personal expense. So just have that documentation laid out clearly. Even a contract would be helpful ahead of the tarmac and the airplane leaving the tarmac to make sure that you are proving the business expense. Another thing is family dinners. Labeling a family dinner as a business meal is a massive red flag to the IRS. If there wasn't a specific agenda discussed with a professional contact, it doesn't count. That does not mean you cannot deduct travel meals while you're out and about and out of the country and creating content, but you might not be able to deduct 6 people's meal, okay? So make sure that you're doing that above board. One last thing is called what we call the vibe day. Okay, if you spend a whole day taking aesthetic shots with no real plan for content or specific project, obviously those shots are useful for you, but the IRS might see that more as a hobby day, not a production day. So let's just make sure that we're documenting things, set aside time specifically for that, and make sure it's part of your itinerary that you're documenting before you ever leave for the trip. Okay, so let's talk about how to defend your decisions. If the burden of proof is on you as the travel content creator, how do we defend those decisions? Number 1 is consistency always wins. If you use the same documentation system for every trip, you're proving that you have a standard business practice. You can have a templated itinerary, you can have templated emails that you send to yourself, and you can even have the receipts in a certain folder that's templated. All of that makes you look like a pro, not someone who's making it up as they go. The other one is confidence is your documentation. If an auditor were to ask, why did you go to Italy? And you can pull up a PDF showing your pre-trip detail itinerary that you made, the goal of the trip, and that especially if those goals were met, then you are immediately, the conversation ends. They know that you have your systems in place and that you have the documentation you need. Okay, so now for the last little bit of this video, I want to talk about the CEO shift, where we want to get you from DIY to CEO of your business. Guessing becomes a liability once your revenue hits 100, 200, 300K and up. When revenue scale changes, so does scrutiny, even without an audit. When in the past you could say, my bookkeeper said it was fine, that's never going to be an okay stance. That's why we want you to work with us, because Misty's system helps you to make the best decisions and have the right templates to have everything documented correctly. Because we work with travel content creators, we have some ready-made templates for travel documentation. We have intent templates, and we even have itineraries that we can share with you that you can edit for exactly your intents and purposes for your trips. We even have travel logs that help to change everything as far as you seeing these trips as fully deductible and the IRS seeing that too. Proactive documentation saves you time and that stress tax that comes 6 months after the trip when you're trying to put together documentation and remember what you did. Just because you take 100 videos doesn't mean you remember every intent of that trip. And so let us save you that stress and even the money long term by helping you get that documentation set up before you go on the trip. So the Misty advantage of working with our team of travel content creator, bookkeepers, and tax strategists is that you're building the trip with the deductions in mind. You have that strategy baked in from the start of working with us. We hand you templates, we answer your questions, and we make sure that we're requesting that information when we see those costs come through to make sure that you are audit proof from the start. We want to help you design travel that supports revenue, content creation, and compliance all simultaneously. We know that your joy is in building content for other people to take in. That's how I found this niche, because I love taking in your content. But we want to make sure that you're also compliant and audit proof. This mindset helps you shift from hobbyist, which is how a lot of people get started. Oh, I just want to share my story. I just want to share my family, to CEO of your business. This is now bringing in enough to put your kids through college or to travel the world. You want to be able to sustain that living by having systems in place. A big thing that we want to help our content creators do is move from, I hope this is okay, to I can substantiate this and I have the templates in place for every single time I leave my house. Okay, that is the benefit of working with someone who is niche down and works with travel specific content creators. Being audit ready is about your peace of mind, not fear from the IRS. You want to make sure that you have that clear content, that clear planning, that clear strategy to make sure that every bit of what you're doing that you love and are passionate about is deductible. And here's the final truth. You do not need to travel less. I hope I didn't scare that into you. What you need to do is travel smarter, with structure, and with proof, and we can help you do that. If this was helpful, subscribe for practical financial guidance built for travel creators who are scaling for the long term. Thanks, guys. See you next time.